Hello, this is attorney Jamie Miller, and welcome to another Miller Minute. Today, we're going to talk about whether or not you can keep your car or your house when you file for bankruptcy. And the answer is yes. Part of our strategy session in consult with you before we even file bankruptcy is determine what debts and what assets you want to keep when you file bankruptcy. So generally, yes. Can you keep your house and keep your car when you file bankruptcy? Of course. We're going to put together a plan for you that's going to show you exactly what steps we need to do that. And in bankruptcy world, we do that through something called a reaffirmation agreement process. So reaffirmation agreement is a voluntary document that obligates you to a loan for a car or a house after you file bankruptcy. So the magic of bankruptcy for some people is that you want to file bankruptcy because you want to surrender your house or surrender your car. In certain circumstances, that may be something that you want to do. But when we file for bankruptcy and you want to keep your car or keep your house, even though you filed for bankruptcy, we re-obligate you to that loan through something called the reaffirmation agreement. It's a document that says essentially that you want to keep the debt and continue making payments on your car or your house after you file for bankruptcy. And how does the reaffirmation agreement work? Well, it's a voluntary agreement. So remember, when you file for bankruptcy, you're essentially canceling the debt on your house or your car. And when you file for bankruptcy, the reaffirmation agreement re-obligates you to that debt so that you can get credit for making payments on your house or your car after you file for bankruptcy. When you want to file for bankruptcy, we'll typically draw up the reaffirmation agreement for you and get it filed with the court. Now, the big benefit of filing a reaffirmation agreement is really twofold. Number one, when you file for bankruptcy, you're going to want to keep your car, keep your home. You want to make sure that you reaffirm because that debt and those payments are going to start reflecting positively on your credit. So it's going to help you rebuild your credit after bankruptcy. So opting in for a reaffirmation agreement is going to be really important to you. Now, what are the downsides of reaffirmation agreement? So let's say that you have a car and it's an older car and you file for bankruptcy and you want the flexibility of keeping that car after the bankruptcy, but perhaps not keeping it for very long. So there's something called a pass-through. So really, when you file for bankruptcy and you want to keep a car, you're obligated to file a reaffirmation agreement. However, if you don't sign a reaffirmation agreement and you continue to make your payments voluntarily through after the bankruptcy is done, you're going to be able to keep your house and car. But let's say 6 months after you file the bankruptcy, you want to surrender the car. If you haven't reaffirmed, you can surrender that car or you can surrender that house and get rid of that debt. However, the downside of the reaffirmation agreement is, let's say you have an older car and you reaffirm on it, and then the car breaks down 6 months after you file bankruptcy. If you surrender the car at that time, even though you file bankruptcy, if you've reaffirmed on that debt, you're going to be responsible for that debt. So again, the reaffirmation agreement process can be great. It's good for you because it helps your credit, but there's also a strategy to it to help, and we're going to talk to you about that, whether or not you're going to continue to, want to pass through and just make those payments voluntarily. So we'll talk about that. And when should you use a reaffirmation agreement? Well, you're definitely going to use a reaffirmation agreement when you're current on your car payment, you're current on your mortgage payment, you're certain that you're going to be able to make all of the payments and that you can afford it to make those payments. So the certainty of making the payments and the certainty of your desire to keep the asset, your car or your home, are really important. And again, if you decide that you want to reaffirm, make sure that you're absolutely certain you can make the payments. If there's any question whatsoever that you can't make the payments, I'm not sure that I would advise you to reaffirm on that, on those obligations. And then how do you request a reaffirmation? Well, when you file a bankruptcy with Miller and Miller, one of the first things we do is we determine and we figure out your intention with regard to your home or your car. And we're going to reach out to the lender and make sure we get the reaffirmation agreement process taken care of. So the reaffirmation agreement is a contract. You'll need to sign it. The lender will sign it, and then we'll have to file it with the court. And what happens after you reaffirm? Essentially, you'll hopefully just continue to make your payments according to the terms of the agreement and according to the terms of the original loan. I always recommend that you get set up on auto pay so that you don't forget to make payments after you reaffirm on the debt. Now, I get a lot of questions. So let's say you're into Chapter 7, and Chapter 7 is normally when we reaffirm on a debt. But when you're into Chapter 7 in 30 days after you file the bankruptcy, let's say you want to reaffirm the debt. But then 30 days after you reaffirm, something happens, you lose a job or you have an illness or the car gets in an accident. Well, you can always rescind the reaffirmation agreement while you're still in the bankruptcy. So you're in a bankruptcy for 90 days. And so you have 60 days after you reaffirm on the debt to rescind the reaffirmation agreement. So there's always an opportunity within that 60-day period to change your mind and surrender the car or house because perhaps your circumstances have changed. Now, what happens if you don't sign the reaffirmation agreement? And that gets to the point of whether or not you really have to sign a reaff, right? So signing a reaffirmation agreement is entirely optional and never required. But let me give you an instance. So let's say you have a 2015 Honda Accord and you owe $20,000 on the Honda Accord and the Honda Accord's worth $10,000. Do you really want to reaffirm on that? Or do you want the opportunity to continue to voluntarily make the payments as long as you do? Or would you rather not reaffirm and have the flexibility to surrender that vehicle at any time? Again, we're here throughout the whole state of Wisconsin to chat with you. These reaffirmation agreement issues are something that we talk to our clients about all the time. Call us at 414-336-7569 anytime. We can get you started today. We can talk about your assets. We can talk about your home. We can talk about your car. But rest assured, when you come to us at Miller and Miller, we are going to determine what your intentions are with regard to your assets. And we're going to do everything we can within our power to help you keep your home, help you keep the car, and do whatever works best for you. Thank you for listening and take care.